Katie Pavich from Town Hall joins us on the show right now. How are you, Katie?
Doing well. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, as always.
You bet. All right, so John Dodson, the ATF whistleblower, he gave the first broadcast interview with Cheryl Atkinson on Fast and Furious. As it turns out, former U.S. attorney, then U.S. attorney for Arizona, Dennis Burke, actually leaked a document and did so to try to smear John Dodson to make it look like he had an axe to grind, like he had actually suggested gun walking in a previous investigation, and that this was, a guy who was upset about inter-office personnel issues as opposed to a guy who was concerned about what was taking place with Fast and Furious.
Right. He was more concerned about working weekends than sending thousands of guns into the hands of Mexican cartels. But we have actually known about this retaliation against John Dodson for about 2 years now. He was the first guy to put his neck out on the line, to come out as the face of the Fast and Furious scandal and really be the one to step up and say, I will put a face on this scandal, here I am. And as you mentioned, he was the first one to go on camera with Cheryl Atkinson, and his life has been turned upside down ever since that point. Now, what we've known in this smearing process was verified yesterday when the Inspector General released a report showing former U.S. Attorney Dennis Burke releasing this information to make John Dodson look bad. And the interesting part about this report was it was pretty brutal towards Dennis Burke, and even suggested that his behavior violated department policy and also violated rules of conduct and professional conduct for the State Bar Association's members. And so that's going to be interesting to see if he loses his law license over this.
Yeah, in particular because, I think looking back in retrospect, it's pretty clear, Katie, that they wanted Dennis Burke. People were talking about Dennis Burke being a candidate for governor in Arizona, possibly heading up the Democrat Party. And in retrospect, it looks clear like they were trying to salvage his political reputation by allowing him to resign. The glowing words said by the Attorney General, the going away party. This was just a guy whose time had come. It was time for him to go. Nothing really to see here. And now we're talking about, possibly losing his license to practice law over this.
Right, and what I've always pointed out with Dennis Burke is that he is kind of the linchpin and the connecting piece to all of the bigger players in Washington, D.C., right? So at the beginning of this, we heard that John Dodson was crazy. He had no credibility. He was one of those rogue ATF employees who had an axe to grind and really had no credibility when it came to talking about the problems within the Bureau, right? Well, Dennis Burke, and we heard that, no one in D.C. knew about this, but Dennis Burke, let's not forget, has a long-standing personal and professional relationship with Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano. He served as one of her staff members when she was the Attorney General of Arizona. He served as her chief of staff when she was governor of Arizona. He followed her into the Obama administration when she was tapped to be Homeland Security Secretary and served as her senior Homeland Security advisor until he was appointed back in Arizona to be the U.S. Attorney there by President Obama. And at that point, he was then hand-selected by Attorney General Eric Holder to be heavily relied upon for advice on Eric Holder's Attorney General's advisory board when it came to border policy and gun trafficking policy with Mexico. And so this guy connects all of the dots between all of these players, not to mention he worked on the Clinton-era assault weapons ban legislation with Rahm Emanuel, and he's really the person that ties all of this together and really one of the people who had a lead role in trying to discredit this scandal from the beginning by ruining the lives of whistleblowers from the start.
Katie, do you think we'll see more of this? Were there more? There were actually more allegations. Vince Cefalu had alleged that he was the target of retaliation. Was the Inspector General investigating his claims as well? Do you know?
There is an ongoing case with Vince's case. There's also an ongoing case with the J. Dobbins case. I know Vince is still in the middle of a court battle with that, of course, they asked them to, he had to turn over a whole bunch of communication, and he is fighting them because they attempted to fire him in a Denny's parking lot. Remember that incident a couple months ago?
Yep.
And so that fight is ongoing, and the Inspector General has their hands full for sure. But I am happy to know that Dennis Burke, who really flew under the radar here because, like you said, he resigned, got this glowing recommendation. Eric Holder even said that his office was the perfect example of how a U.S. Attorney's Office should run, even though this is the same U.S. Attorney's Office who was telling ATF officials not to arrest cartel members who were taking guns across the border, right? He kind of got out without a whole lot of scrutiny, and so it's good to know that the IG didn't go soft on him, and he actually did his job.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Listen, Katie, appreciate you coming on the program, and you're doing yeoman's work, keeping track of all of these scandals. I confess, I mean, we're beyond one hand now. We're on to the second hand of keeping track of all of these things.
Exactly. I got to make some flashcards or something. Keep them all straight.
Where do you think the next scandal will erupt, and what do you how much are you enjoying the Jay Carney press appearances every day now?
I'm getting it is entertaining, but I am getting a little sick of the I can't talk about any ongoing investigation, considering President Obama likes to insert himself in lots of ongoing criminal investigations. The Cambridge Cops case was one, Newtown was one, the Trayvon Martin case was one. He's perfectly happy to opine on ongoing investigations, of course, only if they benefit him politically. But in the case of, tapping the phones of reporters and not just, very isolated cases of reporters, we're talking about reporters from many different outlets, I think that scandal is going to grow. I think that it's become a habit for DOJ to go around the rules and just follow and monitor reporters just because they're doing things that they don't like. We've seen them do this through Media Matters, and now we're seeing that they've done it by accusing Fox reporter James Rosen being a criminal for inquiring about information from a source, which is not a crime, by the way. So I think that's going to really pick up speed here when more reporters decide to issue a FOIA to the FBI and find out that they have a link in their file showing that they've been monitored. I think that'll be a big deal.
All right. Listen, Katie, thanks again for coming on the show, and let's stay in touch.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
All right. Katie Pappas joins us from Town Hall.